Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. Another deck profile for Season 19. This one's going to be for my favorite deck right now, which is none other than Bystial Spright Synchro, to probably nobody's surprise if you've been watching the channel consistently at all lately. So this deck did also get impacted very minorly by the ban list in the semi-limiting of Spright Jet. But at the time that I'm recording this, we're still a few days out from the season, so I wanted to get in some testing with the post-banlist build. But much like yesterday's Branded Despia deck, this one is just going to be -1 card for a slight consistency hit that's not going to ultimately affect too much about how the deck plays. There were actually a few things that I thought about slotting in, but I ultimately just put in the third Imperm. We might see, though, something slightly different if you look at the extra deck and some of these replays coming up here, because I think for at least one of them, I was on the Nemesis Corridor again with the Thunder Dragon Colossus in the extra deck, but I decided pretty quickly that it was still a little too win more. Because I did find myself with not only a spare main deck slot with the Spright Jet getting hit to 2, but also in the extra deck I did finally, you might be able to see here, I finally decided to drop Nightmare Unicorn. I don't think I've ever actually once summoned it playing the deck. I know I haven't since I put in Sharnga at the very least. I don't think I've done it in this variant at all though. Summon Nightmare Unicorn. I just always send it off Prosperity and don't end up doing anything else with it. So yeah, I ultimately decided just to cut the Nightmare Unicorn there. And in its place, I actually put in a second Spright Elf. Believe it or not, this actually does come up quite a bit. We're actually going to see it come up in at least one of the games here. The second Spright Elf is really good for making sure that your turn 1 end boards just have a little bit more of a punch to them. Not only does it, of course, offer the targeting protectors in its linked zones, but on top of that, being able to revive a monster out of your graveyard, whether it's a red or a carrot, or ammo for your red/carrot, ultimately ends up being a lot better than not having it on the board. It becomes a lot easier to put at the end of your turn 1 board, believe it or not, when you have a second copy, because sometimes in your combo, you actually want to use Spright Elf on turn 1 to make the Jet, or to make the Gigantic, and then you can Gigantic for like blue, and then blue for another one. And the second Elf gives you the option to then just follow up with the second Elf. So there you go. I found in this most recent playtesting session that I was going for a combo line that I don't normally do, the one that ends on IP on turn 1. Normally I mostly focus on putting out like as many negates as possible, usually 4 plus like a Sprind to bounce, but it might just been that we had a couple of hands that just happened to open this line, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just me trying out new stuff, but yeah, I just found myself going for the IP Masquerade a lot more than usual, and despite going for IP Masquerade more than usual, like I said, I have not missed Nightmare Unicorn at all. Between Avamax and Underworld Goddess, like, you're already good. This deck's turn 1 inboard, I mean, any turn 1 inboard in this deck that has an IP Masquerade on it is always going to have enough materials to make the Underworld Goddess too. That's just the kind of boards that this deck can spit out if you go uninterrupted, so, or even sometimes through some interruption, so yeah, I don't think that plus, on top of that, we actually don't often have the spare card to discard for Nightmare Unicorn. Believe it or not, it's actually pretty rare that I not only have a card in hand after I'm done comboing, but also that, like, I'm okay proactively discarding it. The only case that would really ever happen was if I resolved a Maxx on my opponent's turn, which if I've already resolved a Maxx and I went first, I'm probably doing pretty well for myself. So, yeah. In that regard, other cards I was thinking about putting in the extra deck. Almirage was actually pretty, and it's actually still a pretty high contender. There's some hands where like you might want to summon like a Necro Shinobi, link it off for an Almirage, banish the Shinobi for a Bystial. Then you can bring back the Shinobi and go into a Chaos Ruler. Sometimes in general you open like a Sharnga, and even if you can't like get extra value off of it, just being able to link it off for Almirage and then summon like a Bystial Magnamhut in your hand is like, it's still just good. So it might help with weird hands like that. I'm thinking that Almirage could potentially be useful, but I think that will still actually come up in the second, less often than the second Elf does. So, I don't know. It's all just kind of a big toss-up at the moment. Otherwise, this deck still plays out pretty much exactly the same way. You want to be summoning Chaos Ruler ASAP, ideally with a Cupid Pitch, so that way you can grab Caligo Claw Crow, and then link off the Crow with the Chaos Ruler in order to make Sprind, and then use Sprind to dump the Necro Shinobi, and then summon back the Chaos Ruler by banishing Shinobi and Cupid Pitch. From there, you have a lot of options. You can obviously go into a Baron, you can usually go into a Spright line, so you can end on like Red and Carrot alongside the Baronne. This is just a brief primer of like what this deck is trying to accomplish for those who haven't somehow seen me play it yet. We are also playing the Blackwing Sharnga just because it's the level 2 tuner that can summon itself basically for free. If you're going second, you're pretty much always going to be fulfilling this condition, or rather your opponent will. And on our side, we can just pretty easily fulfill it with Chaos Ruler. In that regard, sometimes you can go for Blackwing full Armor Master, but this is more of just a cute gimmick extra deck slot. This is honestly something that could be cut, and I would be totally fine with it. I would not go out of your way to make full Armor Master. It's fine, it's not bad to have on your end board, but you can end on better things. Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about the deck at this point in time. So let's break it down card by card, and then we'll look at some gameplay. We're on 3 Maxx, 3 Blackwing Sharnga, the Waning Moon, 1 Caligo Clawcrow, 1 Shinobi Necro, 2 Spright Blue, 2 Spright Jet, 1 Spright Red, 1 Spright Carrot, 3 Assault Synchron, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Bystial Magnamhut, 3 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 1 Bystial Baldrake, 3 Bystial Lubellion, 3 Tuning, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Spright Starter, and then 3 Infinite Impermanence for our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, 1 Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon, 1 Blackwing Full Armor Master, 1 Baronne de Fluer, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Chengying, 1 Gigatic Spright, 1 number 38 Hope Harbinger Titanic Galaxy, 1 IP Masquerena, 2 Spright Elf, 1 Spright Sprind, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusader Avermax, and then finally 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. There's our list. Let's look at some games. Alright, our first opponent is going to be on Fluenderies. These first couple of games are just going to be mostly showing off like what a turn 1 combo with this deck looks like. And I'll show off, because I don't think I've actually shown off the combo line that ends on Masquerena like very consistently here on the channel. So again, we'll get to show that off a couple of times here. I'm going to start off by normal summoning Blackwing Sharnga, the Waning Moon. Opponent was actually very right to chain Maxx in response, although to be fair, they might not necessarily know I have Sprights, but there are a lot of Blackwings that special themselves from hand as well. But either way, I have the Ash Blossom, so it doesn't really matter. So here I'm going to special the Jet. Jet's going to grab Starter. Then I'm going to make the Cupid Pitch. Cupid Pitch will knock itself down to level 2 before I banish for the Bystial Saronir, and then sync those for the Chaos Ruler. This is my favorite chain link in this deck, because we not only get searches off of Cupid Pitch and then the Chaos Ruler, but we also get to chain block them at the end with the Saronir. Granted, our opponent probably doesn't have an Ash Blossom in hand, but it's still nice to be able to play around it here. Although, I mean, you never know, right? So we'll use Saronir to send the Lubellion. The Chaos Ruler is going to excavate not just 1, but 2 Assault Synchrons, which is literally perfect. And that might seem weird. It's like, why do you need 2 Assault Synchron? I actually really want 1 in hand and 1 in the graveyard, because here's the thing about Assault Synchron that a lot of people might not realize. So, Assault Synchron needs to already be in the graveyard at the time your monster on the field is getting banished. If I were to summon this Chaos Ruler back so that way it banishes when it leaves the field, and then special this Assault Synchron without 1 already in the grave, if I synced them, I would not be able to get my Chaos Ruler back, because even though I had an Assault Synchron in the graveyard after the Synchro summon, at the time Chaos Ruler was banished from the field, there was not 1 in my graveyard. So that's why I say I really like seeing not 1 but 2 Assault Synchrons off this Chaos Ruler. So that way I can have 1 to summon and have 1 to use the graveyard effect and not have to worry about like making an awkward play to get this Assault Synchron in my hand in the graveyard before I need to banish for Chaos Ruler. So now I get to just special Caligo Clawcrow, link for Sprind to send Shinobi Necro like I talked about during the profile, banishing Cupid Pitch and Shinobi Necro for the Chaos Ruler, Shinobi Necro F to summon itself back. Now I'll special the Assault Synchron and sneak it in here for the Baronne, since, you know, when you use Assault Synchron to special itself, you have to Synchro while it's on the field. So I'll do the Synchro summon now. See, now the second Assault Synchron in my graveyard is triggering to bring back the Chaos Ruler. From here, I'm just going to pivot into a Spright line by linking, or not linking, overlaying my Shinobi Necro and Spright Sprind. This not only pivots into my Spright line, but now I have not only set up Chaos Ruler in my graveyard, but also the Shinobi Necro in my graveyard. So on the follow-up turn, I can even just do the same thing again. I can banish Shinobi Necro in a light, bring back Chaos Ruler, Shinobi Necro summons itself back. I sync for a 10, the Assault Synchron in my graveyard will bring back Chaos Ruler yet again, just like reusing Chaos Ruler and over and over and over and over and over again. This is honestly just my favorite card right now, so of course I'm playing a deck that is dedicated just summoning it as much as possible, but yeah, this is the end board I was talking about. So as you can see, we've set up 3 negates. This is actually a pretty typical looking Spright end board. We've just also thrown on the Baronne de Fluer here at the end as well. But that's 3 negates, 4 actually if you count the Imperm here, as well as a Revive with the Elf. And then I also get to IP for some shenanigans as well. Alright, my opponent is going to start with a Pot of Prosperity, and I'm actually going to negate it. Now here's the thing. With Pot of Prosperity, whether or not I respond to it, very much depends on how many they banish. If my opponent banishes 3, I'm much less apt to respond to it, just because they're probably playing a combo-based deck, and there's a decent chance I have a spell or trap card that I want to disrupt later. But if they banish 6, they're either on a stun deck or on a Flaunderies or maybe on Exorcister or something. And I don't want them to get 6 cards deep because a lot of the time that's far more than enough to find plays. And it's also just scarier, so it's like, I'm just going to use the Carrot here to sack red and negate it. But it's going to respond with the Flaunderies and the Advent of Adventure, banishing the Empen from hand. I'm going to chain the Baron here. I'm totally fine with that because at the end of this chain link, I'm going to have 2 monster negates in the form of red and Imperm. So there's no way, even if they still have like a Rabina in hand, that that's happening. And I can even still potentially use IP to either go for Avermax or Underworld Goddess. And yeah, they're just going to concede, especially because, like, with the IP Avermax, Flaunderies actually has a pretty hard time sometimes getting over that if they can't make, especially if they can't make the M-Pen. But yeah, my opponent was not going to be able to do much of anything with an end board like this. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next duel here. Okay, so this time we're going to be up against Heroes, and I think this game is going to more or less play out the same way. I think it even ends up being the same combo line, relatively speaking. And now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure... No, because I actually opened tuning here. Now, I was going to say both combo lines are a result of me not opening Assault Synchron, but that clearly is not the case, because again, I just opened a tuning here, so... Yeah, I would have really liked to have milled a light or a dark monster off that tuning. Oh, you know what? I'm actually not going to have access to Assault Synchron. That's right, because even though I open tuning, I actually have to banish it for Saronir here. So that's, I guess, the kind of like starting setup that leads me to the more Sprite-looking end board with IP is like when you have this very specific situation where you can open into a Chaos Ruler with Cupid Pitch and Saronir, but you don't actually know if you have access to an Assault Synchron yet. Yeah, that was a hand that Almiraj might have been able to help a little bit, but at the same time, it's like we found plenty of plays anyway. We are actually also just going to excavate another Assault Synchron here because we're just the luckiest player in the world. I still have my normal summon too on top of that. It's actually kind of wild. Okay, so we're using the normal summon Assault Synchron here. I'm going to use that to link for the Sprind because, again, I already... Oh, no, actually... Because again, I was going to say I already have one in the grave, but no, what I meant to say was, because again, I've banished my first Assault Synchron from the grave, I need this to be in the graveyard before Chaos Ruler banishes itself from the field, because again, I can't just like, I can't just, link the Crow and the Chaos Ruler for the Sprind, then bring it back and then sync the Chaos Ruler and the Assault Synchron for Baron, because that Assault Synchron will not bring back the Chaos Ruler, and I want the Chaos Ruler to come back, so... Gonna link the Assault Synchron and Chaos Ruler for Sprind. Chaos Ruler is gonna bring itself back. Shinobi Necro will now bring itself back, and we can just make Baron this way anyway, so it's not like it ended up really mattering or anything. Alright, yep, now Assault Synchron effect is going to activate. That will bring back the Chaos Ruler, and we're pretty much in the same state as that other game, so now we're just going to make the Gigantic, and I guess this is, when you're in this situation where you can do the Cupid Pitch, Chaos Ruler, Saronir, Chain Link, but without an Assault Synchron. But then you find it. That's the thing I actually really like about this deck, is that what combo line you go for is like so dependent on not only your opening hand, but also what disruption your opponent had and what you excavate off the Chaos Ruler. It's like very malleable, and you end on strong combo lines pretty much no matter what, honestly, which is the coolest part. Yep, so once again, here's the IP. Then I'm going to Starter F to grab the Carrot. set the call by, and then pass over to my opponent. Still even have the Saronir in hand as well for some additional disruption. Okay, opponent's going to start with the Hero Lives. I'm going to definitely Spright Carrot that, and then of course chain the Elf to bring back the red I just sacked off. Thankfully my opponent didn't have like a call by here. If my opponent had call by, I probably would use the Baron on it, honestly. So here they're going to activate Polymerization next, and of course now I know I'm playing against Hero. I actually really thought about negating this Polymerization with the Baronne de Fluer. Not because I was necessarily scared of what's going to get summoned. I can just deal with that using either red and or IP. But I was thinking to myself, well, if my opponent sets up enough good heroes in the grave, but then I remembered as I was thinking about it, oh yeah, I have Saronir and Call By. Like, actually does not matter at all what they send, even if it's malicious, which it is going to be malicious. Malicious and Plasma to make the Enforcer. But even if it had been malicious and Denier, I could have done what I did here, which is Saronir to banish the malicious. Now, one very important thing to know about that. I had my toggle set to on for a very specific reason. Because I wanted to summon the Saronir as soon as priority got passed back to me before my opponent had a chance to banish this malicious for cost. Because this does banish from graveyard as cost. So if you wait for them to activate malicious, you can't chain the Bystial and then banish the malicious, because it doesn't work that way. So this target, or this toggle rather, that sits here, having that set to on was crucial there. So after that, my opponent went to end of the main phase. I'm of course going to chain it with the IP Masquerena, and my opponent did not respond with DPE's effect. So my initial plan was to, of course, just go for Avermax, but if my opponent isn't going to respond, then I'll just link away the DPE and everything I haven't used just to make the Underworld Goddess here. And then, yeah, my opponent's only got 2 cards left. I still have an Omni Negate in Baron, a Monster Negate in Spright Red, and my face down Call by the Grave. There's no way my opponent had plays left, so... and Underworld Goddess also gets to negate some of that special summons from Graveyard, which Hero does quite a bit. So, yeah, had a pretty good turn 1 setup against both those decks there. Let's take a look at a game that has a little bit more of a back and forth, though. So for this duel, we're going to be up against Thunder Dragons, which is a very, very cool deck that I am kind of thinking about getting into a little bit, but every time I think about playing Thunder Dragons, I don't actually want to play, like, the fusions. Aside from Colossus, I just want to, like, synchro spam with them, basically. Alright, so this hand is a little awkward, but it's actually not bad at all. Lubellion is going to get activated. My opponent's going to chain Maxx, a very pretty Royal Maxx. But I'm just going to stop here. I'm not going to give them any draws at all. But I want to point out something here real quick. This hand might not look like it, but this hand actually did have the ability to go for a Chaos Roar line. Basically, what I could have done is Bystial Lubellion for the Magnamhut like I did. Then I probably would have actually summoned Saronir first, just to make sure I set up into the Lubellion engrave. But I could have specialed one of the Bystials, again, Saronir. Special Saronir, then special Caligo Clawcrow because I control Dark, special Spright Blue as long as I have a level 2 monster on the field. Then I could have linked the Caligo Clawcrow and the Saronir for Sprind. Sprind F would send Shinobi Necro from deck to grave. Magnamhut banish Shinobi Necro to special itself and the Necro, and then sync for a Chaos Roller. And then now I have Chaos Roller plus Caligo Clawcrow. Would not make Sprint there, of course, because I already would have used a Shinobi Necro, but just wanted to point out that, like, you know, or I would have already, I guess, used Sprint for Shinobi Necro, but I just wanted to point out that, like, that hand actually had Chaos Roar plays. It doesn't look like it, but it actually did. Alright, so opponent's going to start off by linking for a Striker Dragon. Now here, I actually thought my opponent was on Dragon Link, so what I did here was I flipped my toggle to on, and then as my opponent adds the Wyver Burster, I'm going to, as soon as priority gets passed to me, summon this Magnamhut by banishing the Collapse Serpent, because now they can't summon that Wyver Burster they just searched. Also, keep in mind I'm playing against Thunder Dragon, but because my opponent didn't activate Striker Dragon's effect, again, I assume I'm playing against Dragon Link, and I thought they already had the Boot Sector launch in hand. So I'm like, okay, opponent has 2 unknowns, Boot Sector launch and Wyver Burster. This is looking pretty good so far. Yeah, they're going to obviously respond with their Chaos Space, or not respond with, but they'll follow up with their Chaos Space. But now they tribute their Striker Dragon for Thunder Dragon Dark, and now I'm kind of thinking, like, okay, maybe they're not actually on on Dragon Link. So I'm going to target their Dark Monster again so they can't summon Wyver Burster. They're going to use the Saronir they just searched, but I'll chain the Druiswarm, although I maybe should have let the Saronir come down. Maybe that would have been the right play, but Either way, my opponent's going to, well, I guess in this case, rather, my opponent's going to battle with the Thunder Dragon Dark to search for a Hawk. So if nothing else, at least we push through our opponent's battle phase. We will live to see the next turn. It's just going to be a matter of, like, what kind of a board state we're going to be up against. We're going to be up against the Colossus. That's definitely really brutal for this Spright Blue here. Alright, and then my opponent's going to link 3 for, I actually don't remember. Oh, this is Nightmare Unicorn. Nightmare Unicorn to put back my Druiswarm, which was... This is actually very brutal because that Druiswarm was going to be my main way of outing the Colossus. Druiswarm sends, it doesn't destroy, so the Thunder Dragon Colossus would not be able to protect itself. So now I'm going to have to really use my noodle and think out of the box and figure out how I'm going to out this Colossus and still have plays. Thank God I drew a tuner here. That's actually going to make things quite a bit easier. So I'm going to special Sharnga, special Caligo Claw Crow. Even though I'm not using it yet, I want the level 2 monster on the board to later special Spright Blue. So now I'll use the Lubellion effect in hand. Not to search, because I can't, but to summon itself. Because I want to sync for a level 10 with as few resources as possible. I'm summoning the Chengying here. And now I'm going to use my Saronir F to banish the Wyvern Burster. Opponent's going to chain with their Saronir. That's actually 100% fine. I don't care, as long as the monster is getting banished. Because now I get to activate the Chengying effect. That's going to banish our Colossus and their Thunder Dragon Fusion in case they have follow-up. Now that the Colossus is gone, I can special this Spright Blue and start searching. And I can actually find lethal here. Blue is going to grab Jet. Jet's going to grab Starter. I'm going to link the Caligo Claw Crow and the blue for a Spright Elf. Spright Elf is going to activate its effect in order to grab the blue back out of my graveyard. I'll then overlay the 2 in order to grab myself a Gigantic Spright. Gigantic Spright's effect is going to grab a Spright Red for my deck, and then I'm actually going to tribute summon. I'm going to tribute my Jet for Saronir. This will allow my Saronir to beat over my opponents. I don't care if they activate their effect. Gigantic Spright will now beat over the Nightmare Unicorn. We battle with Chengying, we battle with Spright Red, and then I'm going to throw down my last card, Spright Starter, to grab a Carrot and then battle into my opponent. And then even if my opponent had actually survived that, I still have multiple negates. I have a Chengying as well, and then the 3200 Gigantic Spright. Just a bunch of stuff that makes it very difficult to play through and also clear my board with so few cards in hand. So there was that game. Again, that was definitely much more of a back and forth than the others we saw so far. We have one more to check out, so let's go straight into it. And our final opponent is going to be against a Dragon Ruler deck, for real this time. Last opponent was just Thunder Dragons utilizing the baby Chaos Dragons, but no, this one is actually going to be against Chaos Dragons. This time our opponent gets to take the first turn, but thankfully we opened Maxx and Imperm, so definitely going to fire off Maxx. I still like Draw Phase Maxx because there are, in my opinion, still enough triple tactic talents running around out there that it's worth playing around. And also, you know, it's like, sure, you might not necessarily get as many draws if they choose not to summon, but if they don't summon, then you just discard a card to skip your opponent's turn, so I think that's pretty rad. Like, even in a setup like this where my opponent's trying to summon minimally under the Maxx, I still ultimately get a +1 off of it, which is definitely good enough for me. We have the Imperm here as well, so I'm going to go ahead and start by firing that off on the Heraldic Seal, so that way none of my cards get bounced. They'll still get to summon from deck if they tribute, but at least will get bounced. Activating the tuning here, even though I already have Assault Synchron, just in case my opponent feels like Ash Blossoming it. That happens a lot. A lot of people will use Ash Blossom on tuning, so even if you already have Assault Synchron in hand, it's not only that, but it also might mill us a light or a dark monster to summon a Bystial, so I definitely always advise activating tuning, even if you already have the Assault Synchron in hand. So I'll special the Baldrake. Opponent's got a Maxx of their own, so I'm going to have to play through it too, but I'm just going to chain the Saronir, and as soon as I summon Assault Synchron, opponent is going to use the Heraldic Seal's effect. That's totally fine with me. Until I see, of course, that they summon the Baldrake, but here I'm going to sync for Cupid Pitch and try my luck anyway. But thankfully my opponent actually does not banish this. I definitely would have been a little bit more screwed if they would have. But also if they would have, I think I could have still... I don't know, it would have been much harder to find lethal, honestly. So now I'll summon the Chaos Ruler, and of course also get the Cupid Pitch and Saronir's effects. Opponent is now going to use Baldrake, but this is 100% fine because I already have the Assault Synchron in my graveyard, so this Chaos Ruler getting banished from the field is just going to come right back. Saronir is going to send the Lubellion, Chaos Ruler Excavate will still activate. Have a lot of options here, but I think I'm ultimately just going to grab one of the two Sharnga, so I can special that. Love seeing the Shinobi Necro. Unfortunately, we milled our Caligo Claw Crow, so no search off the Cupid Pitch, but it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. So here my opponent is going to utilize the Magnamhut, but against the Lubellion, that's totally fine. I think they just thought that Lubellion was going to be more important to my combo than it actually is. Which is not at all. So, well, I mean, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it's useful, but... Anyway, I'm just going to summon the Baronne here, activate Chaos Ruler's F. I can banish the Shinobi Necro that's in my yard, so that's really cool. Chaos Ruler comes back, here's Shinobi Necro summoning itself, and I'll sync the Shinobi Necro with my Baldrake in order to make the Accel Synchro Stardust. Accel Synchro Stardust F is going to get my Blackwing Sharnga, special the Assault Synchron, and sync that with the Stardust in order to make myself a Chengying once again. It's funny because I almost never summon Chengying too, but this playtest session it came up a lot. And now I'm going to Link, not Synchro Summon, but rather Link for the Spright Elf. That seems a little bit weird, but this actually results in more damage. It also results in my monster getting banished, so now I can use the Chengying effect. My opponent's got a Saronir, but thankfully I targeted Carrot and not a light or a dark monster, so I'm not going to get hit by a Bystial there. In that regard, anyway. I also still haven't used my Baronne's Negate yet. I'm definitely saving that in case my opponent's got a Nibiru, but this Gigantic Spright F will definitely take care of the possibility of any Nibiru as well. Opponent's going to Ash Boss on the Gigantic Spright. I'm going to chain Baronne here, because I'm like, I don't think they have a Nibiru. And even if they have it after this, as soon as the Gigantic resolves, it's not going to be relevant anyway, so... Alright, Gigantic is going to resolve, grab a blue, blue's going to grab Jet, Jet will summon itself, Jet is going to grab the starter. I believe we then link the blue and the Jet off for the Elf, and then Elf F will bring back one of my monsters here. But first I'm going to use Baronne to pop the... Oh no, because I already used Elf's effect, what am I saying? Yeah, for the Gigantic. So, Baronne's going to pop the attack mode monster, so Elf can battle over the defense mode one, and then Chengying, Gigantic Spright, and Baronne will smack my opponent for lethal there. So, there are those games, a couple of, you know, prime examples of going first, no interruptions, and then a couple more back and forth duels. Hope you all enjoyed those. Let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.